So the world is truly being transformed by AI. We all know that. I think it's fairly obvious. But when we take a look at how the world will experience this, it's really what it means to them. So our next panel is made up of people who have, I'm not sure I can say make the transition from research to industry, but are certainly operating industry as researchers, and can certainly give you the perspective from both a research side and a industrial side. So I'm going to introduce Graham Taylor, and then he'll take care of the rest of the panel. So Graham Taylor on the end there is an associate professor of engineering at the University of Guelph, a CFAR Azriela scholar, and an academic director of NextAI, as well as a member of the Vector Institute. So Graham, I will pass it over to you, and it's truly been an honor to be involved in this. This is my last little thing I get to do. But thank you very much, and congratulations, Jeff.
Thanks very much, Cameron. It's my pleasure to be up here on stage with three people I'm fortunate enough to know. And I said to Cam earlier that I'd just like to quickly introduce everybody and say how I got to know them. Because you've all got the programs there, you have their official bios. So I was introduced to Foteini through her previous ventures. So Mimi and Architect, I think, as well. We've known each other over the years. And then she went on to create a new little startup of sorts called Borealis within the RBC family, and has grown that to be quite a force in Canadian AI, so we're really happy to have her here. Raquel, I got to know the first time, I think, was when I was a PhD student, and she came as a postdoc visiting from Switzerland, I think, at the time. PhD student from Switzerland, okay. So really always been really impressed by her work in machine learning and computer vision. She went off to do great things at TTI, and I remember everybody being so excited to have her back to start a faculty position at U of T. And a couple years ago, started another chapter with Uber AI, Uber ATG. So we're happy to have her here and tell us a little bit about that. And Andy, I didn't overlap with at Toronto, but we had some common friends. I think I remember going to a Radiohead concert with Simon Sandero and a dinner at Dangerous Dan's in sort of 2004, 2005 together. I read Andy's papers on products of hidden Markov models and ended up extending some of that work. So his work as a PhD student in about 2002 inspired me in 2005 or 2006. Thanks a lot, Andy, and it's good to get to know you over the years. So I thought this is a symposium, of course, to honor Jeff, and I can't see if Jeff's actually out there because, as other people have remarked, the lights are completely blinding up here. But I thought I would just share my own anecdote. I told Rich I would do it at the beginning of this panel. And we've been talking a lot about distributions with Radford and other people, and I think about this distribution of the things Jeff was doing in his office when we walked in to see him. And I think there were two really highly probable events. One of them was Jeff had MATLAB open, and he was coding something up, a new idea, and he was always very eager to tell you about it and share it with you. And I don't think I've ever run into another faculty member who is coding as much as Jeff did and experimenting. And the other thing was another highly probable event would you walk into Jeff's office and he would have the news open. He was reading a news article, and that tells us, Jeff really cared about what was going on in the world. So he was either furthering science or he was caring about what was happening in the world around us. And I think it shows us that Jeff really got his priorities straight. There was never a time when we walked into his office and he was doing some administrative nonsense. So it paid off. So Jeff, you and Sam, my other advisor, were role models to me and really encouraged me to go into academics. And definitely what you taught me, I've shared, I hope I've shared with my own students and people I've mentored over the years. So thank you. In the same way, I just wanted to open it up to the panel, starting off honoring Jeff at this symposium. Is there anything any of you would like to share working with Jeff? I'm going to put Andy maybe on the spot because you were working with Jeff the longest. I know you've all interacted with him. Anything you want to share while Can we kick this off?
Well, I mean, I had the the privilege and pleasure of doing my PhD with his supervision, and that was a fantastic opportunity. Working with Jeff and also all the great people that he gathered around him. So at the time, people like Max Welling or Zubin Garamani, Sam Royce, David Mackay, all these brilliant people who I got to learn from and work with. So that was the I guess the good side of working with Jeff. Another sort of anecdote I guess I could share is that Jeff, for a long time, has been a client of CIBC. And so he, every time, fortunately not frequently, every time he has a bad customer experience, he likes to dash off an indignant and outraged email. So I have to help resolve those issues. And I have many other, I could go on, I'll try not to ramble, but one of my sort of interesting experiences when I was doing my PhD is people may not realize that Jeff at the U of T was cross-posted between computer science and psychology, and so one of his duties was every couple of years to teach an undergraduate psychology course. So naturally he wanted to teach them about neural networks and did sort of a cut-down version of his graduate course in neural networks for undergrad psychology students. So they didn't really have the prerequisites, so lecture 1 was linear algebra, lecture 2 was computer programming in MATLAB, and then for the students who were remaining, I had to sort of guide them as the TA. I had to guide them through the course and learn some things about machine learning. And just the other thing about working with Jeff is just he's famous for the applications of his work, but it's always for him been about, I think, understanding the brain, how the brain works, and his enthusiasm for new ideas. And regularly every 6 months or a year he would burst into the lab and say, this time I've discovered how the brain works. I finally figured it out. All that stuff we did before that was wrong, but this time it's really going to work. And those ideas are always kind of percolating, and so that's working with someone like that is really inspirational.
Thanks a lot. Raquel, do you want to add anything at this point?
Let's see. So I guess I came to Canada almost 6 years ago, and one of the big attractions was definitely to be close to Jeff and learn from Jeff. And my interactions with him have always been great. I think one of the interesting things with Jeff is that you can always learn something, no matter what the topic is. But I never actually co-authored with Jeff, so I'm going to have a question for him. Is maybe capsules and self-driving? Maybe this is the thing that is missing. So if Jeff is in the audience, maybe it's time to work together.
Foteini.
I know Jeff for a long time, but he didn't know me, and I kept it this way for a long time. I was a graduate student in electrical engineering at U of T, and I would audit his classes. He had an incredible reputation even before deep learning became very mainstream at U of T. I would just sit at the back of the room and try to disappear as much as possible. He's been fantastic mentoring students, and just his teaching abilities, like you would be there, you would completely understand everything that he's talking about, you walk away and feel like completely enlightened, like he just sheds a new light onto something you've been thinking for a long time, and you thought you understood well. Most recently, I have the opportunity to interact with Jeff as part of the federal government AI Advisory Council that I'm honored to be co-chairing, and it's just a fantastic thing to have him there and see how much of a responsibility he feels to be participating and actively contributing on how society uses AI and proper practices and helping economic development in Canada. You could argue that he could stay focused on research and leave it there, but the amount of time that he's actually spending on helping the government and the industry do better here is extremely remarkable. And I don't know that many people know this about him. It's a lot of work, and he does it.
Okay, well, thanks all for sharing your thoughts on Jeff. We're going to move into some questions now I have for you, and I'm going to start with a quote from the Globe and Mail last year. So Carrie Liu, who's the CEO of RubaCloud, wrote an article stating that AI doesn't need more researchers, it needs more products. And Carrie made this quote that Toronto was headed towards more ivory tower than economic power. So I wanted to start, maybe I'll go back the other way, starting with Foteini first. What do you think about this statement? Was there any truth in this, and have we made any progress in the last year?
I mean, that we are on the front line of science and academics, it's no question around that. We have a larger talent pool, better faculty, and lots of resources academically today than I think in many places in the world. And that's great. We started being more critical around, are we creating the right level of value out of that research here in Canada a few years back? Part of the reason why I started Borealis AI was because I wanted to see Canada's biggest company invest in real artificial intelligence, not just data science that most executives call AI. There's a lot of misconception about what AI is in the Canadian industry. But investing in creating jobs here at home where people can continue to do research but also bring that research to life all the way. I think that's extremely important. And it's something that's very close to my heart. As I said, I started my career in the university. I did my PhD, but I had the opportunity to build a company out of that, commercialize my research, build a product, raise money on it, and I got to see the entire journey. And it would be, I think, very limiting if we looked at that journey and we just stopped it at the research stage and we didn't take it all the way through to create value for this country, for people that have funded this research forever. And I think it's up to all of us to be thinking about this. How can we do this better in our companies? But also what responsibility newer graduates carry coming out of Canadian universities. Are they considering building their companies here, commercializing their research here, joining other Canadian companies, or generally staying in Canada and bringing that research to life? I don't want to discount, though, the importance of research. I think it's very dangerous if you start only thinking about commercialization. The risk you're running is that you take for granted that just because at a point in time we were on the spotlight, and because we made that advancement, we take for granted that that will continue to happen, and that's very risky. I think we should continue to invest in both, continue to fund research, ensure that our institutes like Vector are fully equipped to be training people and advancing fundamental science, but that's only half of the story. We need to be turning that intellectual property into commercial value, and it's up to our researchers, our AI researchers, to think about how they contribute in that journey as well.
Thanks. Raquel, how are we doing striking a balance between pure research and deriving value from it?
Yes, so I guess I agree definitely with what Foteini said. I think that there is no question about that Canada is in the forefront of AI from a research perspective. But it's important to understand that this is not a zero-sum game. It's not that either you invest in research or you invest in commercialization. It's something that you need to continue, with being at the forefront, while at the same time trying to bring the value to the local ecosystem. Now, in order to do so, it's important that you create a competitive market where there is opportunities for people to do amazing work, and that's what actually keeps the talent here. right? Instead of exploring to the US as it was the case before. This is one of the reasons why we co-founded the Vector Institute. And definitely, we have seen a big change in the past, 12.5 years into how many people were fleeing somewhere else, or how many people have decided to actually get commercial value out of the technology that's happening here. So I think it's very, very positive. There is still a lot to do. There is a lot of education to do of the companies that cannot afford to really be experts in AI. But I think there is many things in place towards getting to really squeeze that value.
Okay. Andy, is there anything else you'd like to add on this point?
I think just that you need both, and it's kind of the research and the academic environment that they're also, in addition to doing the research, they're training people and creating those offshoots of people who are aware of these technologies and able to take them into industry. And we shouldn't think of the products of AI just being specifically like startups with a particular AI-based product, but as these technologies kind of permeate the economy, there'll be lots of opportunities to use these in kind of traditional or incumbent companies. And so having the flow of students being able to populate those positions and carry the technology into businesses where maybe they don't have the experience or awareness to be able to implement it themselves.
Okay. So Raquel, I'm going to come back to you in a second because I know you hold a position at University of Toronto. So I'd like to ask Foteini and then Andy in terms of taking on research projects that's in collaboration with a university. Is this something that you do within Borealis? Have you done R&D instead of building it necessarily in-house? Have you done research collaborations?
Yeah, so Borealis AI is the research center for machine learning for the Royal Bank. I think that as the only way to do research is if you have open academic collaborations with your ecosystem, with the universities or other research groups. We have 5 centers in the country, and that was very important to us, that we are across Canada, and all of them are co-located within university campuses. If you visit Edmonton, you're going to find our office near the AME group. You go to Vancouver, we're in very close ties with SFU and UBC. In Montreal, we're co-located with Mila. We have very strong ties with our academic partners, and the way we work is we will collaborate on fundamental research topics that are relevant to our business, but perhaps are so risky that it would take way more resources and brain power than what we have within Borealis. So we would look to the institutes and the universities for collaboration on those. We have a number of papers that we've co-authored over the years with researchers from the Vector Institute, from Mila, from Amy. We also bring in a lot of interns. I think that's extremely important for the Canadian industry to do, because it's not always clear what for young researchers, what they would do in the Canadian industry if they joined in a machine learning position. I think there's a lot of misconception about what that job looks like in a bank. I mean, if you can work at Uber, why would you work at a bank? But there's very interesting, and we get this question all the time.
And it's recorded, right?
It's true. But if we look at this country and the resources we have, the banking sector is our biggest economic driver. This is where AI has to come to life. There's no way, we just can't look away from that. And it's seemingly it may be a traditional sector, but once you go through the door and you start to understand how these businesses work, what AI can do for them, there's beautiful, beautiful research problems that would like to expose more students to. And we do that through internships. We bring people in early on and they get to understand us better. The collaboration also extends to projects that have more societal application. We just announced our partnership with Mila on climate change and applications of machine learning there. We collaborate with the research groups there on on computer vision applications for generative models that take photographs of street views and show what they could look like should they be affected by a rapid environmental change, trying to raise awareness through that. And these are the types of collaborations we do sometimes with universities, but we act a lot like academia, so we've set up ourselves this way so that we can enable that collaboration. We publish all the research that we do at Borealis, and I think that's a key ingredient to be able to achieve that level of partnership with academics, if you're in the industry.
Andy, do you have examples of projects that you've done with university?
Yeah, so certainly with the Vector Institute, we're working closely on in the financial services work streams that Vector has initiated to provide our opinions and input into creating a position on AI in the banking sector. We're also involved in a couple of the research projects in NLP and reinforcement learning that are happening there. So we're working closely with Vector. We've done research, funded research projects at universities where we find that if given the right problem, where we can find that this sort of intersection between something where there's the right business value and then an interesting problem for the researchers to be able to sort of take that and run with it and produce some new innovative methods that's been very beneficial. And they often have the additional benefit of sort of bringing that knowledge about current or layest research into our company, and it gives our people a chance to interact with folks who are kind of at the cutting edge. So it's been very beneficial.
So Raquel, I'd like to turn to you and Uber, and I understand it's been quite fluid in terms of the activities you can conduct between U of T and Uber. And so it used to be a choice between academic life and industry life, but you found a balance. So is it possible to have this sort of this perfect life where it's sort of half and half? Is it a struggle? How's that working in terms of these two commitments?
Yes, it's interesting, right? Because we always talk about the choice. Either you're in academia or you're in industry, or you split your life somehow. But to me, I only have one life, which means that actually it's a joint thing. So there's no such a thing as a split between U of T and Uber. And so when I explain, in my case, why this is actually important, so I've been doing research in self-driving for the past 10 years, and one of the things I realized at university was at some point, I sort of reached the limit of what I could do. And in such a domain, you need a fleet of cars, of hundreds of cars, you need hundreds of engineers to really understand what are the things that you can solve with robust engineering, and what are the real open questions that researchers should solve. And I found that, just at university, right, this was not something I could actually address, or that my students could actually really make a big impact. So that was the reason why I started this venture, right? And I bring all my students with me. I gave them the choice whether they wanted to do that. So we have a joint PhD program with U of T, where you can do all your research in the Uber lab and really understand what are these next generation of problems. And I think it's not anymore a choice. It's actually, yes, in some industries this is very natural. That you want to do research, in these areas where you need very, very big investments, right? We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. This is the only way.
And do you think, I understand how universities work, and so I understand that it would take some time to put a joint PhD program into place. Do you think this has paved the way for future engagements between industry and U of T?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is an example, something that is very beneficial for the students, right? That we should always think about them the first thing. It's very beneficial for the university, and it's very beneficial for the company as well, right? So everybody wins, and it's beneficial for the local ecosystem because it helps really attract a lot of talent. So if you manage to create a setting of such, and this is proof of existence, right? I think we can build a lot of other opportunities with other companies, through the same sort of like arrangements that we have. And I really look forward. I think it makes a lot of sense for this to happen.
Could I comment that 3 years ago we were having coffee and Raquel was telling me, my heart was melting at the time because Raquel was saying, it makes no sense for me to be in Canada. There's just nothing for us to do here. I can't achieve everything I want through the industry, and academically we're not well organized. And how far we came in the last 3 years, and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
And thank you for staying back and doing this. It's important.
I was wrong, yes.
So I'm going to keep it, again, talking about sort of industry and academic institutions working together. And something that's happened this fall is Vector's launched a new course on neural nets and deep learning. Roger Gross has been involved in organizing and coordinating that course. Andy, I understand you've also been involved in setting things up. This is a course that's been designed for students from industry. And can you tell us a little bit about how that course is going and your role in its development?
So we've just got underway, and so it was a privilege to be asked to participate. So thank you for that. Really the Vector faculty, Roger, Jörn, and Juan are principally teaching the material of the course, and then I'm doing some sessions on kind of the industry perspective, trying to, I see my role as filling in the gaps a little bit between what's taught in, in machine learning. You work on problems that are sort of well studied. Data sets are clean and prepped and ready to go, and in industry that's never the case, right? So I think that's kind of the gap between what happens in academia when you're studying and sort of moving into industry is just understanding sort of you get these problems to work on which are not sort of well framed, and the data is not clean and ready, and you have to kind of work out what are the questions you need to ask to understand if a given use case is appropriate for, even appropriate for a machine learning solution, and then sort of what are the approaches to take, and what are the things you need to understand about the business context in order to create an appropriate solution. So those are some of the things that I'm talking about in the few sessions that I'm teaching.
Okay. So earlier today, we saw an example from Ilya about this hand, doing sort of in-hand manipulation on a Rubik's Cube, and it was essentially being able to take a system that was trained in simulation and deployed in the real world based on deep reinforcement learning. And we've seen many examples of deep learning in industry, but it's been harder to operationalize reinforcement learning. So Foteini, I know about a year ago when I touched base with you, you were ramping up efforts considerably in that area. You opened an Alberta office, hired Matt Taylor, and did a number of, Pascal Poupart also came on board, so people that are working on reinforcement learning. Have you had some success operationalizing RL within Borealis and maybe RBC more broadly?
Yeah, so RL is a very active research area for us, but one where we are also focused on building products for RBC. The reason why we invested in it to start was because in banking and financial services you have a lot of sequential data, and you make a lot of decisions that change behaviors and change environments. So it felt natural that we need to invest in this type of machine learning just because it's well suited for this capability. One of the areas where we've seen the most success, and we're using it in different businesses, is in capital markets and specifically algorithmic trading. We've been at this problem for a long time. Around the AlphaGo time, our researchers were starting up at Borealis, and we, like the rest of the world, we were amazed by what was happening at DeepMind. We were meeting with traders from RBC, and they would explain to us what their job is like and how algorithmic trading works. And there was this flash in front of us because the problem that they were describing to us about how they make trade buy-sell decisions every day was formulating itself as a reinforcement learning problem. And we just fell in love with the idea that, hey, if you can simulate a game, can you, with reinforcement learning, and be successful at it, can you do that for a live market, which is, so it's very complex, there's a lot of different strategies, it's a very efficient environment. So we started on this path about 3 years ago, and it's very interesting to see how you get to bring something like that to life through a bank, because that's a very regulated, well-controlled environment. We don't just write the code and then we hit the start button and it happens. You go through a very long process of speaking to your regulators, making sure this new way of trading complies with the standards that should be in place, and with laws around that as well. And we've been very successful at it so far. So very soon, in the next couple of months, we'll be in position to talk more broadly and openly about this research. Stay tuned, because I think it's a very interesting landmark for reinforcement learning outside gaming. You can actually use it to understand and simulate markets as well. It's a very strong set of algorithms for that environment too.
Okay. We're here at a symposium that's titled The Evolution of Deep Learning. And Andy, you've been, I think, working in industry the longest of any of our panelists. So what could you tell us about the evolution of deep learning from, I think it was around probably 2002 or so when you went out.
Distinction.
Yeah. So how have you seen the field?
Well, when I started in industry, I was actually part of a team that was focused on applying machine learning to banking problems. So we were kind of well ahead of the curve, and at a time when no one knew what machine learning was. So I mean, that's certainly been the biggest change, is that, with the all the recent successes and the increased awareness, now everyone is aware of what can be done, or with the possibilities, and more enthusiastic about using it. So that's kind of changed how we work within the organization. Now we don't have to explain what we're trying to do. People kind of understand it. It's created kind of a different situation now, where we have lots of opportunities to apply these methods on different business problems. But now it's more of an education phase, where we have to work with the business people to help them understand kind of what's possible, what's not possible. What's the difference between supervised learning and unsupervised learning, and why do we have to label these data sets and things like that. So making people aware of that, and also the other aspect of that is become sort of increased scrutiny about how we're deploying these methods, and certainly the regulators are interested in how machine learning is being deployed in the organization, and increasingly important topics like about the interpretability of models, the fairness or bias in data, and robustness of models. How do we know that these things are going to perform safely in production environments, and all those questions are being asked, and they're good things to think about, and certainly we're having to answer those questions.
Have Raquel or Foteini, either of you seen an evolution in deep learning since you've been in your respective positions? I know it's not as long as sort of since 2002, but have there been some changes in the last couple of years, which have been?
So I mean, from our side, so the answer is obviously yes, right? The reason why I was hired was actually to bring the next generation of deep learning / machine learning algorithms to the program, and to build a research group to actually go, to the next generation before everybody else, right? So it has definitely changed a lot of things. And it's really, really exciting what we see, right? And this is just the beginning of what can be. I think just throughout the industry there is a lot of changes, right? But as I mentioned before, it's not just about the technology companies. We see, now the banks being, very cutting edge in terms of machine learning as well. But this has to reach, every single one of the companies, such that we can really help the economy, right?
Well, I think Borealis AI started after we were right into the deep learning, the new era in machine learning. But I can definitely answer this from the perspective of what banking and data and statistics looked before and after that. So I think at RBC, because the before still exists, if you think of banks, we have about 20,000 models that run every day. I'm sure you have 20,000 models running across the business every day with fraud detection, how you lend money, how you design portfolios. Statistics has been there. It's part of how they do business day to day. What deep learning brought in, it's not just a better way of doing this, that's sure. It created opportunities to build completely new services, completely new products that did not exist in banking before. So applying reinforcement learning for trading, coming from a world where that is done using rules-based system, it's a huge jump. We have systems with NLP systems now that analyze news overnight at RBC, and they will predict what information is impactful for companies of interest. This is not technology that was available or accessible to us just a few years ago. It's through deep learning and that evolution in applications in NLP that became accessible and creates brand new opportunities for banks to be building products in that space. So there's the old still and the new. And at least from a research perspective, we're not really working on fraud models or lending models or things like that. We're constantly looking at how can we use deep learning, reinforcement learning, to create competitive intellectual property that enables the business to be successful 3 to 5 to 10 years from now as well. That's the Borealis AI mandate.
So I'd like to pick up on something that George Dahl said in his talk yesterday. So he said we should really explore the limits of what we know rather than try to always create something novel. And he also said we have a desperate need for more experimentalists. So is this something, this sort of drive for novelty that we feel in the academic world, something that also exists in industry? Is it the same? Is it worse? Does anybody have a perspective on that? Maybe Raquel, because you're sort of on the border between industry and academics. Like, does this problem that George described exist in industry as well?
So not necessarily. I'm laughing because there is an obsession in academia of the value of novelty, quote unquote. And it's interesting to think about what novelty is, right? Because just trying out something different doesn't mean it's good, right? And I think in academia, in industry, people are very pragmatic. It's not necessarily about coming up with something funky that looks cool. It's more about what is realistic, that is going to get the job done, and in a way that is better than anything that you had before. So the thinking is actually really different, and there is a lot of innovation into how you actually try to solve the problem, the real problem that you want to solve. So it's a very different type of innovation that, to me, is very exciting to see how the real problem really showcases what are the things that you need to come up with, instead of I'm going to try maybe set of new things and hopefully something will work somewhere, right? So At the same time, in industry, you see a lot as well the lack of innovation, right? Where people just say, there is a paper, I want to implement it, and it's going to solve all my problems, right? So that's also not the solution as well. So I think that is, you can go in both directions, and it should be something that is in the middle where the right balance is. Right?
Yeah.
Foteini?
I would actually agree. The definition is very different. In the industry, you always start with a very constrained problem where you have a very specific business need, you know what you're working towards, you can be curiosity driven, but towards that specific goal, going down rabbit holes where you research and explore ideas that are not aligned with that goal usually are not okay. It's something that academia enables. I think you need both though as well, because that journey of advancing fundamental ideas needs to be protected, it needs to be in place, but it's also very interesting to see how that translates in the industry. And the beauty of that is really the fact that you get to put something in people's hands early, get that feedback, iterate on it quickly, and you shape a vision as you go, which is not something you get to see often in academia. So I think it's inspiring on both sides, and I would highly encourage people from the industry to get exposed to and understand what fundamental research is about, but academics to also consider getting their hands dirty with productionizing machine learning, because there's just so much to learn on that side too, and it's equally beautiful.
And if I can add something to this, so it's interesting how in industry, a lot of the innovation is also into what is the problem to tackle. And this is something that, in academia you lack the ability to do that because you don't know what the production system is or what you're trying to solve. And it's from the industry perspective, I think it's very, very interesting to really think about, there's a billion things that you can do, right? And you're always going to come up with some very interesting things, ways to actually solve these problems. But what really matters is what are you solving now and in which order you solve those problems.
And is this something that's actually you've brought back into your academic life, sort of the ability to sort of formulate these problems and recognize them? And
Yeah. So in the lab, everything that we do, we actually publish. So you can, really reverse engineer our thinking by just looking at the sequence of papers. So it's interesting, right? That definitely conditions the problems that we tackle, right? I mean, then within those problems, right, there is a lot of innovation, right? Also from the academic perspective. Right?
Andy, anything you want to add on sort of the empirical truth versus the quest for novelty?
Well, I'd say that in our environment, we try to steer everything or tie it towards some business problems. So, and I think that can be quite helpful in terms of focusing your thinking on a particular problem, the constraints of that problem, and coming up with creative solutions, but ones that are tied to that end goal. So I think that helps focus your thinking and keep things on track.
So we do have a few minutes for questions. So, and I was told we were allowed to do this, so I'd like to open it up, and I hope we are equipped AV-wise to take a question from the audience. If you do have a question, I'd ask you to stand up. And I see Jackie moving. She might be grabbing a microphone. And it'd be great if you are able to direct it to one of the panelists as well. Max is standing, and I see one in the back. So, Max, I can repeat your question if you want to just shout it.
There's a mic.
Oh, it's coming.
So I have a question for Raquel. I'm very interested in what you said about the joint PhD program. What happens to the IP in this case? Because does the university give away the IP to Uber, or does Uber not care about the IP and not patent it?
Yeah, so there are specific arrangements depending on where the work is done, whether it is done at the university versus done in the Uber lab. But what is important is that the students are compensated for their IP if they decide to do this. So there is an arrangement, and they can decide what they want to do. So there is it's nice things in place such that that can happen. They, by contract, they publish everything they do, and they can use everything for their thesis and bring everything back to the university if they decided to, stop the program. Right. So all students are protected. So it's important that you build an environment where you really, as I said, protect the students, because they are the real value, and they're the ones that we should, as supervisors, we should watch out for, right? And then it's building the constraints around. And Uber was extremely open to do this, which was great.
Okay, there's a question in the middle near the back. Yep.
Hi. Yeah. I know you asked about asking this question to one of the 3 or one of the 4 there, but I'm an undergraduate student at U of T, and I wanted to find out. So a lot of this research conference has been focused very much on kind of postgraduate level studies and how those kind of students can contribute. I wanted to ask about what kind of contributions undergraduates can make, and how maybe we can kind of start the process of involving them in research a little bit earlier. And this is, I guess, a question for either of the 3.
So see if I can take this one. So there is plenty of opportunities in industry for undergraduates to do research. For example, in the lab, we have had more than 100 undergrads that have done, full research projects. So there is definitely, plenty of opportunities, and you just have to apply for internships, PY, co-ops, whatever your, university, offers.
Yeah, similarly at Borealis AI, positions that would be applicable in that case are those of research engineers or part of our development teams that give you that support the skills you've already developed from your undergraduate degree, but expose you to the more of the cutting edge research as part of just building together with the researchers.
So just to give you an idea, I have someone in the lab doing research that is 18 years old, and it's fantastic. There is no age for anything.
I also would like to point out the reproducibility studies that are becoming more popular, where you go and attempt to reproduce the results of a submission to a conference like NeurIPS or iClear. This is being run now, and you produce a short report, and it's a great opportunity to get your hands dirty in some research with some guidance, and also produce something that's valuable to the community. Maybe one more question, then we'll wrap up. I don't see any more questions. Okay, so, one popped. Okay, we will take one more from sort of the middle. Thanks, Jackie.
Hi, I'm someone who's in UX, in the business area within financial services, and I recently worked on a chatbot project, and I'm looking to see where the bridges can be built between the deeper research and then people like me who are trying to figure out what AI is and how to apply it in my day-to-day work. Are any thoughts on that at all?
So we have UX teams that would also be looking at early on understanding what are these concepts in AI, how can they be used in financial services products, and getting these ideas in front of clients as quickly as possible and getting that feedback. So we very routinely will sit down with our BC clients or businesses that bank with us, and we'll go through, hey, here's an NLP capability, here's what you can do with computer vision. Can you imagine a world where you do X versus Y and get to see their reactions? A lot of misconception, of course, around what AI can or cannot do. And you have to really try to see through that noise and get to the point of it. But it's, I think they go hand in hand, because it creates a brand new capability. We know that in banking, we're not just going to be servicing our customers with loans and mortgages and credit cards in the future. We are evolving as an industry, and how to better understand our clients and use AI to do that. It's a booming field right now.
Okay, I see some more questions, but I think we are going to have to end it because we're out of time. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining me today, and to Vector for organizing this great 2-day symposium. So I think we're almost at the end. Rich Zemmel, our director, is going to come up and say some closing remarks. Thanks, everybody.